I'm Loren Keim, broker and occasional referee, and today I'm going to be your host and moderator for what I can only describe as a real estate royal smackdown. Actually, we're just going to have a discussion today. But today's topic is about coming soon listings and pre-marketing strategies. Is it a brilliant innovation or is it a dangerous detour? Are they building momentum and protecting value, or are they limiting exposure, not letting properties be out there in the multi-list and Zillow and other places, and potentially quietly leaving money on the table? Now, we've got two outstanding brokers joining us today, Jotham and Michael. One of them might make the case for strategic pre-marketing, how it can build demand, control the narrative, and maybe give sellers more options. And maybe they'll just both discuss it. And the other might argue the flip side, which is that limiting exposure can reduce competition, raise fairness concerns, and potentially impact price. But my job today is to keep things simple. I want to keep things moving forward, keep everything fair, and step in before anybody throws the lockbox. So this should hopefully be a fun, informative, and a little bit competitive session today. So let me start out I'll pose a question to Jotham. Do you think coming soon listings are actually about helping the seller, or do you think it's helping the listing agent control the deal?
I think it helps the listing agent more than it helps anyone. It can help the seller. I've seen it help the seller as far as getting the top dollar for the home. I've definitely seen that, but it takes a lot of buyers out of the equation immediately. And I've seen a lot of buyers give up on even the home buying process due to running into coming soon homes again and again and again. So I would say overall it benefits mostly the listing agent. It can benefit the seller. It does not benefit the buyers whatsoever.
Understood. Michael, if maximum exposure equals maximum price, why do you think somebody would intentionally limit their exposure, even if it's just for a few days, to do one of these coming soon?
I think it creates demand, before you actually release the final product. It's like a coming attractions trailer to a movie. It builds anticipation. It definitely puts the listing agent in full control. It gives the seller kind of an opportunity to see what their house is actually worth. Because you think about it, once you list your house on the open market, there's no going back. If you list it too high, it's going to be on there. It's going to, decrease in value, so to speak. You can't take that back. So before you actually list it on the market and getting those early eyeballs, kind of gauging where people are at, buyers are at, it could give the seller definitely a better position before they list on the open market.
That's an interesting point. And that's one of the things that Redfin's been talking about, the idea that when something gets posted on Zillow, it tells you how many days on the market it is, which is fine. But if it's on the market a little bit of time, many buyers think that maybe something's wrong with it. And the second part of it is, if you do show, which is what you're saying, Michael, if you do reduce the price, it tracks that on places like Zillow and Realtor.com so that the buyer knows that and may use that as an indication that something's wrong and it's falling in price. Jotham, do you agree or disagree with that philosophy?
Yeah, I agree that it's effective. I have used it before. I'm not saying I haven't used the strategy before. I think it's very helpful, particularly if your goal is to squeeze every last drop of juice out of the buyers that are available to you. That's an effective strategy. But the problem is that the top dollar buyer, we all know this, the top dollar buyer is not always the best buyer. So the buyer who can throw the most money at a situation is not always the best buyer. They don't always have the best intentions. They're not always the best qualified buyer. And so if you're strictly looking at dollar amounts, a coming soon is always going to bring that to the top. However, it doesn't bring the best buyer to the top. And that's been my concern with it. Particularly when you're dealing as a buyer's agent, and I have, both. I have listings, I have buyers that I work with. when you're dealing with a buyer who's a great buyer, well qualified, good people, well intentioned, and they get their heart broken again and again and again because of coming soon listings, and they just can't compete with people who have a ton of liquid capital to throw as a down payment or to attract make an attractive offer to a seller. When you deal with buyers and see them get their hearts crushed again and again and again, that's where you really start to question if if it's even ethical to do coming soon.
Understood. And for those of you who don't realize it right now, everybody's taking sides in this battle. The big brands, Century 21, Compass, Coldwell Banker, Better Homes and Gardens, Sotheby's, and a number of others have all aligned with the Redfin platform, which is going to offer this coming soon platform where any leads or any buyers interested in the properties are going to go directly to the listing agent, the person who knows the property. Remax and Keller Williams and Berkshire have aligned with Zillow that's going to do something similar. It's a little bit watered down, from my opinion, from what Redfin's doing. And then EXP is aligned with, I think it's Homes.com, all doing the same thing. And then Howard Hanna is doing their own thing on their own website, which is kind of separating the market somewhat. But many of these properties may not be in the MLS, depending on if the MLS allows it, because they're setting this up where they have this coming soon idea. Michael, one of the benefits that they're touting to sellers is the fact that many of these listing agents, if they have both sides of the commission, may drop the commission rate a bit, maybe by 1 or 2 or whatever percent, for this somewhat limited exposure. Do you see that as a benefit to the sellers?
Absolutely, because they're going to be walking away with more money.
And the fact that someone is answering the phone that actually knows the property, they're more likely to be able to talk to the buyer intelligently about that property.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
But
I
can I interject and just ask you a question, Michael? Have you seen instances where sellers, agents get a little bit greedy when it comes to dual agency, and they tend to not allow certain people to see the properties, or they just discourage certain offers from even being like written in the first place because they have opportunity to get this bigger amount?
Absolutely. I think it just comes down to the agent, their integrity as a human being at that point.
Yeah.
But I think it's more motivating to the seller to pay out less of a commission.
That is one of the arguments that people used to use pretty often on being able to pre-list a property that has kind of gone away with what's called the clear cooperation policy. Prior to this whole setup with these lawsuits going back and forth, and the idea with Redfin and Zillow and Homes.com that we're going to allow these pre-listings once again. So it's going to be interesting to see what these major brokers do. Do either of you think, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just want to say this also. This is something that as agents, we are constantly educating ourselves and reminding clients what our value is as agents. You know what I mean? Of course, a seller is always going to want to pay out less after the sale of their home or their property. We as agents, it's on us to demonstrate why we get paid what we get paid, why a lower commission is not always the most beneficial thing to a seller. You know what I mean? So again, I feel like the whole coming soon question, it benefits the agent more than it benefits the seller in a lot of instances.
How so?
Understood. Go ahead.
Well, like I just said, I believe that it's geared to it's one of these situations where the agent's not going to lose. The agent's not going to lose. The seller may benefit. They may have to pay out less commission. There may be a dual agency situation, and the seller may have a prearranged agreement with the seller where if I find my own buyer, I'll pay, you only have to pay me whatever, 3%, 4%, whatever commission they agree on. But in terms of cultivating ethics in the industry, which should always be all of our concern, I don't think this is beneficial to cultivating more ethical agents and a more ethical buying and selling process.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah, I
is
see your
interesting. One of the problems that we've been dealing with for quite a while, ever since the Zillow effect happened, is that so many consumers go to Zillow. And again, Zillow redirects any calls. So if somebody sees, my picture or Michael's picture, Jotham's picture next to a listing and clicks for information, Zillow redirects those leads, those buyers, to whoever's paying Zillow the most for those leads. And so you end up getting someone that really probably doesn't know anything about the property, picking up the phone and taking that buyer and showing them properties. And it has disadvantaged a lot of the listing agents who are very strong in trying to represent their sellers and trying to provide them the best service in showing their own listings and so forth. And that has really changed the market over the last decade with Zillow doing this. So I know some of it is certainly some of it is certainly realtors being upset with the fact that they are benefiting Zillow. In fact, if I have a listing, I may have to pay Zillow to get a lead back from Zillow on my own listing, which has always been frustrating.
Yeah.
So any comment from either one of you on what's been happening with the marketplace?
Jotham, you want to go first?
It's exactly what I was just saying. Like, I think it cultivates the wrong type of competition. I think it's geared towards cornering a market instead of teaching agents to be ethical, teaching agents to promote fair market values. I think it encourages greed ultimately.
But then the thing is, it's like if we're going in this direction anyway, it's like, what's the quickest way we could adapt as realtors, in the most fair way possible? And not everybody's going to play fair. That's just the reality. But like, what are the positives to this? Like a coming soon listing, depending on how long the coming soon period is it bound to hit the MLS or is it just limited to Zillow?
It will eventually hit the MLS if you don't sell it first.
Okay, I see. So what are the positives to that? Let's talk about that. We're not necessarily chasing buyers in that period. You're making buyers compete. You're getting the word out. You're giving them the movie trailer. It's like
theoretically,
timing.
Right. Theoretically, you're building momentum, and it's not ticking the clock on the MLS or ticking the clock on Zillow or Realtor.com. So buyers don't necessarily know whether or not the property's been on the market a long period of time or not.
Because first impression on the market is permanent.
It is, and you can strip away some of the negative baggage of a property sitting on the market. That's one thing that it eliminates. It also eliminates that automated estimation of value, which impacts the way buyers think. And you've probably both experienced this as well, where we have a property that's certainly worth more than what Zillow has it valued at, because Zillow is an algorithm. They have not seen the house. They're taking a sampling of what's around it and applying an algorithm to it to try and figure out what they think it's worth, but it's a computer. And that doesn't mean it's right. So it may show on Zillow that it's worth, $500,000 and it's really worth $750,000. And that's been an ongoing problem for years. And buyers will pull that Zillow report and bring it along and say you're overpriced because Zillow says it's overpriced. And the exact opposite happens as well. There are times when Zillow has the price too high, and a home seller will believe that number because they want to emotionally think their house is worth $750,000 when it's worth $500,000. And it becomes a challenge trying to show them that we're not just trying to sell their property quickly. We're trying to give them the best advice we can, which is, regardless of what Zillow says, the real marketplace for this is a bit lower. And the reason that Zillow is coming up with a higher number is it's pulling an algorithm around this house, and you happen to be living in a 1973 townhouse, and you're right next door to houses built in 2026. And that's been an ongoing problem.
Yeah, agreed. It's like this. We can't do anything about relying on algorithms. This is the way the world is, and it's it's inevitable. We all see the direction that it's headed. It's just I feel like the thing someone needs to focus on is guardrails, because the direction this is headed, you basically are having 4 camps, 5 camps, you know what I mean, who are hoarding their own little corner of the market. And what's the next logical step from there? You know what I mean? Like, it just like when you're thinking of like these technological leaps and these, I guess it's sort of like a blind eye by real estate commissions where they're like, before it's the area right before a new rule or a new law gets put into place where things are the most chaotic and corrupt, I would say. So it kind of feels like we're approaching that area right now, an area of sort of Wild West before someone catches on to, hey, this is not ethical. This is not good for the industry. This makes all real estate agents look bad when these type of incidences keep happening. So I think guardrails is really what I'm advocating for. I'm not against coming soon listings, but I am for guardrails to avoid corruption.
Low quality, low quality agents.
Bad service to clients, and kind of painting us all with a broad brush that it's a corrupt industry,
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you see it, because if you choose not to see it as fairness, it's more about like your fiduciary duty to the seller, and not necessarily to make it fair to the buyers. The job is to win for the seller.
Right, you're not wrong.
Everything you're doing is to maximize the seller's position. It reminds me a little bit of commercial real estate. Everything off-market commercial. You make calls, hey, you own this property. Would you be open to selling it? Boom, that's your listing right there. That's your baby. You want to do everything you can to get your seller the best price. You make some calls, find somebody who wants to buy that. It's a lot like that, maybe, unless you use social media. How are people anticipating doing these coming soon listings anyway? Social media presence?
Well, I mean, the major portals. So for a buyer, you're probably going to have to be looking at sites like Redfin, Central21.com, Zillow, Homes.com, and Realtor.com, because there may be, under this scenario, different listings on each one. And back to your point of commercial, because it's a great point. One of the things that I thought was a benefit of the multi-list decades ago was it brought all the realtors together where everybody shared everything. And I thought that was a great thing when it happened. With commercial real estate, one of the challenges, if you're not in this industry that you might not realize, is, in any market, anywhere between 30 and 70% of the listings on commercial are not in a multiple listing system, because a lot of the pure commercial players don't list things. They try and double end them. They try and hide them. They only put them on their sites. And so it leads to consumers, small business people, investors, buyers, searching one site after another to try and find every listing that's out there that meets their needs. Whereas for the houses, if someone wants to buy something in the Parkland School District, they can call any realtor, and that realtor can find every single property that's in Parkland and try and help them to find that property. In commercial, we had to negotiate fees with every single different person. We had to call around to find properties. And it feels a little bit like we're going backward here. And I understand a lot of people think that this is going to benefit the sellers with a reduced fee. And I completely understand the whole Zillow effect and the fact that it has really turned the industry on its head to begin with, which has been a problem for many real estate brokers. But at the same time, we're rolling the clock back to the point where we're going to have agents trying desperately to find properties that are for sale that are not in the MLS system, that may be on a website somewhere, and we've got to reach out and find that agent and see if it's available and try and get our buyer in to see it.
Yeah, it feels like agents are taking a step back in a sense that they're now working specifically with themselves, finding the buyers, being like a dual agent. They're no longer dependent on a buyer's agent to find them a buyer. That's the way it seems. It seems more like self-centered, I guess, if you could say. My question to you, Loren, is do you think that this is going to weed out some real estate agents?
I do. I actually wonder what's going to happen with boutique brokerages. So, for example, if you are, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, Remix, Keller Williams, the big brands that everybody knows, they set up deals with these different portals, right? And obviously, places like century21.com is one of the most viewed portals on the internet. But if buyers can't find every listing on the multi-list, or they can't find every listing on Zillow or Realtor.com, they're going to be searching themselves into different places. And if you're a boutique broker, if you don't have the same access to both list properties on those types of portals and potentially have to go out and find properties for your buyers, I do think it puts a lot of those boutique firms at a disadvantage. That's at least the way I see it now. I could be wrong, and we'll see how this plays out. But I think the major brands having this pre-access is going to give them a little bit of an advantage to some of the smaller firms, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The analogy you said earlier about this going the way of cable television, where, at first it was a great thing. Oh my God, we got rid of cable, my cable bill. All I pay now is a Netflix bill. But most people now have Netflix, Hulu, Prime, Disney Plus. You know what I mean? Like they can have 8 different streaming services and they're paying double what they were paying for cable.
Right.
And it sort of feels like that's where we're headed. You're gonna have to belong to all of these. I'm sure there will probably be a price to belong to one of these other brokerages, MLSs. They're gonna put a price on it. Why not? Oh, you want to see our listings? Sure, pay us for it. So it could be a situation where belonging to your local MLS is not enough, and you have to belong to these private brokerage MLSs.
Are we allowed to curse on here, Loren?
No.
Okay. All right. Who gets
How
screwed?
mad are you?
Who gets screwed the most in this situation? The first-time home buyers and buyers agents primarily.
In
Like,
my experience, that's who gets screwed the most is buyers who are qualified to buy a home. And in other markets and other eras of real estate, they would have no problem getting into a home. But they're getting beat by people who just have more upfront capital.
Well, it's been like that since COVID, don't you think?
Yeah.
But the coming soon is probably
definitely.
just the cherry on top.
This is definitely accelerating it. Or not accelerating it, but cementing it. You know what I mean? I don't think it's accelerating it. I think it's cementing it as this is just the way it is.
So
And,
do you think a lot of realtors are going to fall off now? And it's just going to look different, real estate?
what do you think?
It's hard to say, but I think so. I think we will see some realtors that are leaving the industry.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So according to National Association of Realtors, in 2025, 71.1% of realtors in the United States sold 0 houses, 0. And another 14%, it's awful. And another 14% sold somewhere between 1 and 4 homes. Now, by the way, if you're tuning in from home, that's why you should call somebody like Jotham or Michael or me, because we're experienced professionals that are selling a lot of properties. But the problem we're dealing with right now is already that there are a smaller percentage of agents that are doing most of the business because of the way we're marketing. And this coming soon may lead to even more of that. We may see even more movement to a smaller pool of agents that are doing a lot of the business, the ones that have access to some of these tools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't mind being one of those agents. I will, no matter what way it falls, I will be one of those agents because I hustle and we all hustle, right? But
Right.
I don't think it's good for the industry. You know what I mean? And if
As a whole.
as I was taught in the beginning, if you look out for the ethical approach you're going to more than likely be a good realtor as long as you hustle and you keep focused on the ethical approach. So I would say, I kind of long for something a little bit slower, just in terms of the industry as a whole. I feel like it would benefit from some guardrails. You know,
So what percentage of sellers do you think are going to want to do the coming soon?
That's a good question. When it used to be allowed before this whole clear cooperation policy, there were sellers who I should say were talked into it. Now, there were some sellers where it really benefited them. I'll give you a couple of examples. We had a TikTok celebrity that wanted to list their property and they didn't want it on the open market on the MLS because they were apparently filming from their house regularly and they were afraid it would be recognized and people would show up just to see the house. We've had a number of celebrities over the years, believe it or not, in our part of Pennsylvania that have sold properties with us. So that was a concern. The other thing that has happened, though, if you've got a property that wants to try a high number first, knowing that we're overpriced, and we try and give people the best advice we can, but there are times when somebody has to try a high price because they feel somehow in their gut that they're going to get a higher number than the market indicates. It might not be a bad idea for them to test the market in a more limited fashion, hitting places like Redfin and Century21.com rather than going full bore on Zillow, because once the numbers start tracking, it looks bad for them when you start dropping price and start sitting on the market longer. So I can see that. But in the past, there were realtors who tried talking the owners into it by using the tactic, well, I'll take a 2% lower commission if I sell it myself, so let's keep it off the market for 2 weeks. But often they would do that with properties that certainly would have sold anyway. And perhaps if you had a broader pool of buyers each bidding, they would have gotten a higher price for it. So that may have been offset by the 2% difference. And that's always the argument with selling yourself. I'm going to sell it myself to save the commission. Well, that never works. I shouldn't say it never works, but it seldom works. Because the
Lauren, I have a
reality is,
Go
go ahead. I was just going to say the reality is that buyers often come with a realtor anyway, and the seller ends up paying them. And very often that person ends up trying to list with a realtor anyway, because realtors have typically access to a lot more tools and a lot more buyers.
So Lauren, let's say hypothetically a seller comes to you and they say, I want to sell my house, but I want to do the coming soon thing.
Mhm.
Walk me through what that would look like. How long does the coming soon phase last before it hits the open market? Is that determined by the agent and the seller? Is that spoken about, or is there some kind of legal guideline that you have to follow?
So at the moment, some of the MLSs who are not allowing this will require it to be in the MLS within 24 hours, but then don't allow showings for a certain period of time, up to maybe 2 weeks. Some of the MLSs that are going to theoretically, according to these rules, maybe back down from that and not required to be in the multi-list. I don't think there's any specific time frame. And there's a couple of ways to look at it. One of them has always been, if we do something that's coming soon, but we put it in the multi-list, we put it in Zillow, we put it in Realtor.com, but we set a date, maybe 10 days from now, or maybe 2 weeks from now, where we have a great big open house. We don't have any showings until that day. We might build momentum, and that momentum might lead to a large open house with a lot of people there. And that can create an auction effect. And that auction effect can lead to 2 or 3 couples panicking and paying a lot for that property, which is what we're trying to do in the best interest of our seller. But the other way to look at this is really putting it on the market for a more extended period of time so that it doesn't have that same stigma sitting on the market with Zillow. So that might be a longer period, and it's a little different than the coming soon that we've been doing.
So you're saying the coming soon, you could put it on things like Zillow and Realtor.com without a price tag. Like, is it going to have a section
Well,
for
no,
the
you always have to have a price tag on it. You've got to have a price or the portals won't take them.
even during coming soon?
Yeah.
And Zillow is going to allow us to do that without the MLS?
Not without the MLS. Zillow will only allow it with the MLS, I'm not sure what their contract is with Remax, but historically it had to be in the MLS in order for it to go on Zillow, which is part of the reason I think Compass and Century 21 and Coldwell Bank are all paired with Redfin to do it on Redfin instead. And I think the other reason was I think so many large brokerages were so tired of having all their work go to Zillow, customers log into that portal and having all their work being sold to whoever the highest bidder is. So those buyers go someplace else instead of the person who actually knows the property.
So is this just an Pennsylvania thing? And if one MLS does it, do they all have to?
No, it's every MLS has their own set of rules. They're all governed by the National Association, but they do have their own rules. And this whole concept is nationwide.
nationwide?
I'll say I've had a good experience recently with the coming soon because I've been talking negative about it, but I did have a great experience last week with the coming soon property. As a realtor familiar with my local market, I recognized a house that was underpriced by a lot, I suspected.
Mhm.
And my buyer put a monster offer on a house and still came in under what I suspected it would appraise for. But it was over asking price. And this was on a coming soon that had a ton of traffic. And we were a little bit worried because of how many showings there were and you know how that goes. And we got our offer accepted and we just got the appraisal back and it's there 22,000 under the appraised value of the house, which is what
Wow.
the only way I recognize that is because I'm familiar with the area. But they put a great offer on a pretty you know, decent priced house. It's in the it was priced in the sevens and we ended up offering 800,000 and it's appraised at 822.
Wow.
Nice.
So, and that was a coming soon. That was a super competitive one. I know they had multiple offers. And so I'm not saying there's zero benefit to it. And I'm not saying that it's an unwinnable situation. I'm just saying as a whole, I've seen more hearts get broken with coming soon than elated buyers or sellers, you know.
Whose hearts are broken? And how is
Uh,
this going to affect first-time home buyers? Like, I also want to hear your thoughts on that.
So I've had first time home buyers that I've literally been working with for over a year.
Yeah, it happens.
That's not an exaggeration. I had a closing last week with a first time home buyer I've been working with for one solid year. They got an offer accepted finally. We had to kind of think outside the box because they were starting to get to the point where they're going to walk away from buying a home altogether. It gets that frustrating for some of these people. I think they suffer the most, especially, you know, probably historically like a certain age group that quite making their full amount of money they're going to make in their adult life. You know what I mean? They don't quite have all of the capital they need to compete with, like, you know, uh, someone who's been working longer in the workforce and has bigger down payments. So I would say
Mhm.
first time home buyers, FHA home buyers suffer greatly. VA home buyers, they suffer. It's not a conventional with at least 20% down and a sizable deposit and people willing to waive inspections. And, you know, these offers get kind of crazy out here. And it
Mhm.
coming soon brings the crazy out of people.
Is it possible sellers could just, waste the seller's agent's time and say, yeah, let's just keep it coming soon until I get the price that I want? And it's coming soon for like 2 months. We're just edging the market, basically. We're not going to do anything with it. You know what? I changed my mind. I don't want to sell my house.
Lauren, isn't there I think some MLS, I think they have like a limit on how far in advance, like you have to limit
They
the
do.
time.
Yeah, they do. But I think from what I'm hearing, at least, and obviously this is all brand new, it sounds like a lot of that is going to change. But there are some MLSs that are going to hold firm on it. There are some that are not. So we're going to have to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Gonna be interesting. I will mention one of the things you pointed out. One of the reasons to hire a great agent like Jotham in this case is the fact that if you're trying to get somebody to help them to buy a house, you need to know how to compete on offers. And you have to understand some of the, I hate to say games, but some of the back end stuff that you have to do to structure your offer to actually get it approved when you're in a multiple bid situation. So it's important to work with a top experienced agent so that you actually get your offer through. It's not that we can guarantee something, but there are techniques we might use other than just putting in a standard offer and hoping something goes through. And that's been particularly a problem since the pandemic started.
Well, and Jotham was also saying, it's not going to attract the best buyer, but it's going to attract the most serious buyer, wouldn't you say?
It's going to attract the most money. So if that's the only criteria you're looking, it will attract the most money. That's kind of proven. But the most money is not the most committed to the sale always. And the most money is not the most well-qualified buyer. So just in terms of top dollar, if you're thinking of this from a just purely, dollar amount, and you're ignoring all these other red flags that pop up in a deal, you know what I mean? And you're only focused on that dollar amount, a coming soon will always pull out the highest dollar. Well, not always, but it will often pull out the highest dollar.
Yeah, because it creates scarcity. It creates
But
anticipation.
It does not guarantee a closing. It does not guarantee you have the best buyer with the best intentions.
We used to talk about buyers being, when I'm working with a seller, we used to talk about buyers being either serious or qualified, but not necessarily both. A buyer's serious because they really, really want a property, but maybe they're not the best qualified. And a buyer is maybe really qualified, but they're kind of hemming and hawing about whether or not this is the perfect property. And that second kind sometimes gets buyer's remorse. And they find a way out of a contract, whether it's a home inspection or something else.
Mhm.
They back out, and then the seller's stuck back at square one. So when we're working to benefit a seller, we try and work with finding somebody who's both qualified and serious, somebody who's definitely committed to buying the property, that's going to put a sizable down payment, that is going to absolutely go forward with the transaction, and at the same time, somebody who's qualified. And again, those are not always the same person. We've got to find somebody who's both serious and qualified. So in wrapping up, kind of closing this out, Michael, do you have any last words about the idea of coming soon and these pre-listing concepts?
I feel like personally, as a realtor, I'm prepared for it because, Loren, I focus mainly on off-market commercial real estate. So I think it's going to be very similar. I think there's going to be a lot of similarities to that. I'm just curious as to know if this is actually happening. Is this 100% and how it's going to affect the market? I guess we're going to have to see. Other than that, we have no choice. Could we fight it? Probably not. So if it does happen and it is implemented, we're going to have to learn how to adapt.
True. Jotham?
Yeah, adaptation is what we do best. And if you don't, it's not the right industry for you. You know what I
That's
mean?
true.
So,
Yeah.
you have to learn to adapt. Either way, we're going to prepare ourselves to succeed, and keep educating ourselves in what regulations are already in place and what regulations are on the horizon. And that's all we can really do. I would say if there's agents listening to this, definitely focus on ethics. If you are using coming soon, just focus on being ethical and doing the right thing for the industry. It's only going to pay off for you and everyone around you in the future. And if you're a buyer or seller listening to this, make sure that you research both sides of coming soon, what the benefits are and what the harm is. Because, speaking to sellers specifically, it's not always in your best interest to cut a lot of competition out. And a top dollar offer is not always the best offer.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate everything today. I think this was a great discussion, and I think we'll probably do another one in the next couple of weeks as we learn how this is actually all going to play out.
Mhm.
So thanks for joining us today. I hope anybody who tuned in enjoyed this, and we will see you in the next couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you, Loren.
Ooh.